Today I'm going to speak to you about a controversial subject that's currently getting debated all over the world. To start, I'm going to quote a Chris Rock special. In the special, he says, "Whenever the cops gun down an innocent black man, they always say the same thing. Well, it's not most cops. It's just a few bad apples. But some jobs can't have bad apples. Some jobs, everybody's got to be good. Like pilots. American Airlines can't be like most of our pilots like to land. We just got a few bad apples that like to crash into the mountains. Please bear with us." So today I'm going to be talking about defunding the police. I believe that the state governments should take a look and analyze the money being allocated to our police departments and find where there's excessive spending and use this excessive spending to fund other things such as social outreach programs, community outreach, and things of the such. While Chris Rock's interpretation of the situation is comical, his point does stand. If an airline wouldn't tolerate a bad pilot, why does our government tolerate bad cops? Before I go any further, I would just like to explain the defund portion of my title. As I've been researching and watching the news, I have seen the term get thrown around a lot, and it has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. Defunding to me would mean that we would analyze specifically where we can make cuts in the police department and use those cuts to fund other programs, like I said, social outreach, community outreach, and programs that benefit the community as a whole, rather than using it on the police where we have seen excessive force and acts of violence by the people who are meant to protect us. So a little background on the info on the situation. Well, the Rodney King incident, that was not the first case of excessive force used by police. It's definitely the most widely documented of its time, and here we are 29 years later, and somehow after this event, things have only gotten worse since then. I believe this topic is extremely relevant to today's society, so I felt a need to speak on it. A small little anecdote: when I was 16 years old, I was walking home from a friend's house, and I was pulled over by 3 cop cars. 5 officers got out, guns drawn, telling me to get on the ground, and it was a very scary situation, but lucky for me, I was able to walk away from it. But unfortunately, that's not the case for so many Americans. I'm definitely not an expert on the situation, despite that little incident, but I don't think you need to be an expert to look at the increasing cases of police brutality and murders at the hands of the police and know that there's a problem here, and there's something we need to do as a country. So I'm going to cover in my main points why we need to defund the police, what we should use these funds on, how the allocation of these funds will benefit us. I'm going to explain how this plan is going to work, how this plan stands out over other solutions, and how the Camden Police Department did away with their police and how they redefined policing in their city, and how our other cities should look to this as a guide in the future. So I believe it's really important to listen to my argument because it's very relevant to today's society. These instances of police killing citizens unnecessarily seems to be occurring more and more frequently as time passes, and I feel like we must make a change to protect our citizens from unjust murder. So through conducting research for my subject, I found an article that has a chart I'm going to post below so you guys can see. The chart basically covers the total police spending percentages of the city budgets, so you can see exactly how much these different important cities are spending on police, and almost all of them are spending about at least a quarter, if not more, towards police protection. And you would think that if you were spending this much on police protection that we would get better results. Unfortunately, since then, things have only worsened, and we have seen the murder of such innocent citizens like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Daniel Shaver, and those are just to name a few. I could definitely go on with the list. So in response to these recent deaths, there were obviously many protests that were conducted, and at these protests, we saw cops firing rubber bullets at citizens, using tear gas, and these uses of force actually have caused great bodily harm to many citizens who were simply protesting peacefully, and even caused the death of one Columbus woman, Sarah Grossman. So I don't believe that these actions are what the American taxpayer is paying our police to do, and if this is how the police want to conduct themselves, I believe that it's time to make a reform. So I believe by reinvesting this money that may have been needlessly spent on various police departments that we can use on social programs or community outreach, therefore bettering our communities so we lessen the need for police in the future. My plan is for the state governments to look at the money that's being given to the police departments and see where we can cut spending where it's unnecessary. I particularly think this process starts by looking at the riot gear that was implemented in all of these peaceful protests. That I personally think you can look at the tear gas and rubber bullets and things like that that are getting spent on by the PDs and possibly cut those and use those for programs like social programs, community outreach, so we can build our communities and come together as people rather than divide as we are now as a country. I think by investing the money into social programs and community outreach, we can use social workers and outreach programs to reach those in communities who may be at risk of falling into a life of crime and change the cycle before it even begins. I believe also we can use these funds to issue further training for officers, teaching them how to de-escalate situations before resorting to the firearm unnecessarily, which I believe is in dire need in this country. I believe that defunding is a workable and practical plan because it takes money from certain things like riot gear, which is rarely used but very expensive, and when it's utilized it's getting misused. I believe by taking away this money and reallocating for social programs and outreach, we can stop the spread of crime in the community by reaching out to the youth and changing the cycles early on. Like I said again, also reallocating this money to the, retraining officers so that we can train them to be less violent, as well as potentially doing psychological evaluations to make sure the officers that we're hiring are fit for duty. So far I've seen no other plans regarding to my topic. The only other argument I've seen is people who are arguing that we should keep things the way they are, and I don't believe that is a solution that's viable, as keeping things the way they are have only dug us deeper in the hole we are as a country. So I feel like we need to take swift action and make change before we dig ourselves deeper into this hole. The major objection I see is that people have made the argument that defunding the police will cause criminals to come take over the cities and run rampant. However, in 2012, Camden, New Jersey was the most violent city in all of America. Just a year later, they disbanded their police for a more Peace Corps approach to policing in their city. And when they made this approach, half the officers did walk out of the building on the first day when finding this out, but the rest stayed. And Camden actually has become a model for the cities who look to abolish the police and are looking for a more friendly, peace-driven, for the citizen police force. So I believe by reallocating these funds we can focus on our communities and retraining our police so that we can build our communities rather than to divide them. Today I spoke with you about defunding the police. I wanted to speak on this topic because I feel we need an alternative to the police considering what's been occurring in our society today. I discussed the various instances of violence brought on by the police to our citizens to urge others to see this excessive force being used so that we as a society can demand better from our police and from our governments. According to an article I found for the speech, in 1930 was the deadliest year for police officers in the United States. 307 officers were killed in line of duty that year. However, in this just last year, 1,030 people have been killed so far by the hands of the police. So, in their deadliest year, they lost 300 lives, and in just this last year, we've almost quadrupled that. I think that statistic alone shows that it's very clear we need to make a change to protect our people. Thank you for listening to me speak.